Welcome back for another one in our series of educational videos for Northern Virginia homeowners. I'm joined again by the expert in home remodeling, maintenance, and repair in Northern Virginia, Jeremiah Davies, president of Orion Home Improvements. How are we doing today, Jeremiah?
Frank, it's another great day.
Thank you so much for being with us. Today, Jeremiah, we're going to talk about decks. And I think, decks they seem nice and recreational and a lot of fun. They can be a little bit dangerous if you don't maintain them well, if you ask more of them than they're able actually to give you. What if we're thinking about getting a new deck put on a home that had not previously had a deck installed? What are some general things that we need to keep in mind, sort of features, functions, benefits, and just stuff to look out for?
Well, I guess in that realm, if we're talking about the beginning, we really need to kind of assess, is this going to be, a do-it-yourself project, or is this going to be, locate a great contractor and get it done? That's always the crucial starting point for any homeowner doing anything on their home. If we're looking at, kind of getting with a contractor, the first thing that you're going to want to do is make sure the contractor brings to the first meeting, something like this. It's called the typical deck details for whatever county you're in. And inside this manual, there's going to be lots of kind of information about how to build the deck and kind of the code requirements go along with it. So when we're kind of going at the starting point, you'll want to and this stuff is all available online. You can read it yourself if that's the type of person for you, or you can just rely on an expert.
Great. So there are things that we should look for in terms of different types of railings, or is there just, is a deck, or we're going to talk about the building materials in just a moment, but short of the different materials that you can build a deck out of, are there features that I'm not thinking of about a deck, like stairways coming down from them, or having electrical fixtures out on the posts, that type of thing?
Absolutely. What you want to do is you want to take a look at reasonably what's your budget for the project, and then add 20% to it. A lot of people, they tend to have an idea, or maybe go online and kind of find what a square foot of deck typically costs. And what we find out is that by adding the small bells and whistles, outside of if it's a regular wood deck and you want to get it stained and colored, a lot of people don't consider that into the cost of building the deck. Low voltage lighting to, like you said, put some lights on the posts, or make sure that the stairs have lights, which is again required by code to make sure you don't have people tripping and falling. Other things to consider is, do you have a contractor that's able to build the steps in a custom way, so where every step is a uniform height? You get either a short top step or a short bottom step, and you can have some trouble with people, kind of underestimating or overestimating and kind of tripping on that stuff. So really what it does is come with your budget, add 20% to it, and then take into account all the features when you're kind of out there on Pinterest or looking around of what you want that deck to look like. So when you do have the conversation and start talking about materials and where the stairs are coming from and how the deck is going to be laid out, you're coming with an understanding of what this is really going to cost me.
It's funny when you mention that about a short step. I think we've all had that experience somewhere or another. And it points up, such a small detail, but that can have such a huge impact. It sort of brings to mind, in my mind at least, that not just anybody's going to be able to build a good deck. You need to find somebody who's built a deck or two before yours.
Absolutely. And it's not saying that someone who knows how to do it and this is their first time building a deck isn't going to be able to do a good job, because anybody who really puts their mind to something can get something done properly. But to do it quickly, and understand that how things come together the right way, and make sure you're not doing stuff over, having someone with experience is really key. There's one thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration when looking at a contractor and someone who's really masterful with their carpentry skills, and that's let's look at the deck boards, and let's look at how they are planing. Are they going to put the deck boards so that the concave surface is kind of going up or under? Is it going to cup and hold water, or is it going to run off? And that's when you see a deck that has a lot of like stains and pockets of water that are sitting there. That's because the carpenter didn't understand how to read the wood. Every piece of wood tells its own story. And so knowing how that stuff goes into place really helps a deck to finish out and look nice.
That's great. What a great little tidbit that was. And that certainly demonstrates to me how little I know about carpentry and how to tell the story that a piece of wood's trying to tell me. Now, speaking of a piece of wood, there are a lot of artificial types of deck materials, Trex and other types of stuff that are available in the marketplace, and some of them for a very significant premium price. What should we be thinking about? Should we go with something like that? Should we not? What should we base our decision on?
Well, if you're looking at a typical kind of all wood deck construction, let's say that there's no deck on the house now and you're going to put one in, kind of all together, you're going to have around a $45 per square foot cost in our Northern Virginia area for an all wood deck. And that, again, doesn't include the low voltage lighting or the stains or, some of the extra features that go on with a pretty standard deck. Now, if you want to contrast that with, say, going with a fully wood frame deck with a synthetic topper like the Trex you had mentioned as one brand name, you can jump up to the $90 to $95 per square foot. So it's almost doubling the cost. Now, again, you don't have to worry about the stains, and maintenance is very, very minimal on these things. They look fantastic for a very long time. So the costs definitely kind of, are in line with the benefits you receive. But again, if we're looking at some of these kind of rail systems, if you want to put a fancy rail on there, you can have almost $100 per linear foot for some of these rails. And these are going to be powder coated aluminum, or you're going to have wrought iron rail posts. So again, what I'm saying is look at your budget and then really have an honest conversation with your contractor about kind of what you have imagined in your mind to what your wallet's going to be able to withstand.
Boy, that's amazing. 100% swing in price. And then I guess you have to decide the long-term maintenance versus maintenance-free and a variety of other things that come in. But clearly that's a big difference in price. Well, let's talk about another thing that has to do with safety of a constructed deck. And this could be true whether I'm having a new deck constructed or maybe I'm worried that my older deck is not as safe as it once was. What I'm thinking about is we've all seen news stories over the years where somebody's having a party, maybe it's a college party, a keg party out on the deck, and there's too many people on the deck and the deck collapses and people get injured. How can I be sure, number one, that my deck is safe currently? And then the next thing is, generally speaking, what's a safe number of people to have out on the deck?
Well, it's kind of a tricky question right there, Frank, because it really goes into the construction. You hear these stories of, decks falling off houses or just kind of collapsing, and usually they are missing something in the code for it. But there could be issues with where it's constructed or how it's constructed. If you can imagine having a cantilever, kind of section on your home where your basement and your second floor kind of sticks out maybe a foot or 2 foot on an overhang. Some people would want to connect directly to that overhang, and that's just a big no-no. Some people trying to get these decks done without a county inspector coming by may cut some corners on those things. But then when you talk about live load and kind of, how many people I can put on my deck, it really goes back to the fact of how that deck is constructed structurally. If you have 2x6, rafters versus 2x8s or even 2x10s, obviously the heavier gauge the wood, the more wood or the more weight it can hold. Also, you have your posts that are out there. The closer that your posts are together with your header beam and the size of your rafters are really going to determine the weight that you can put on this deck. We've constructed several decks in the area here where we have to take half the deck and we have to kind of overbuild it because they want to put a hot tub up on the deck. And if you can imagine, we've got a 14-person hot tub sitting on top of, a wood deck. It needs a much heavier construction than having 10 or 15 people over on another side of a deck because of all that water that's in there. So again, what you want to do is you're looking at, the typical deck details, talk with a contractor who really knows what's going on and has some decks built, underneath their belt, and then kind of go into the details of what you want it to perform. Another thing that people don't realize is that, you can recapture the space that's underneath your deck by putting in kind of a rainwater management system. You get the rain that comes down on the deck, you have some kind of rainwater management system that runs that out to an outside gutter, and now you have a complete dry patio area underneath your deck. So that can actually be built into some of these other issues. And of course, it makes the bottom safer, keeps the water away from the house, keeps it from going in the foundation. So lots of things to consider on that aspect.
Wow, that's another great tip. I'd never heard of something like that, but I'm sure we've all seen the underneath of a deck someplace that ends up just being wasted space, and it just looks awful under there. But where if you put that water management system under there, you could have whatever you'd like under there and have additional outdoor space to enjoy. That's a great tip.
Yeah, and there's plenty of systems that can go in during the deck construction, so you can have that. Or even if you have an existing deck now, there's plenty of aftermarket systems that go underneath there to reclaim that space and kind of give yourself a dry refuge when the water comes falling from the sky.
Well, just off the top of your head, and excuse me if this is a left curve question, but any idea on the terms of per square foot cost from one of those management systems, or is it not sold that way?
Well, it's every deck is kind of a custom situation, and there's several different types of rainwater management. So if you want to go with something that just gets the job done, it can be kind of low cost but not look so great. But if you want to have a finished ceiling to really kind of make the area turn into that kind of gathering place and oasis, those can get quite pricey. So it's not something I'd be really comfortable kind of guiding folks with over a video like this. But by just having that information, you can start the conversation with a contractor such as ourselves to really find out, do you have what I need inside my budget kind of questions.
It's interesting, and the way you just expressed it as a ceiling puts a whole different picture in my mind, almost like a drop ceiling underneath of those rafters under that deck. And in addition to the water management aspect, actually looks nice. You have a ceiling up there instead of those exposed rafters and planks of the deck.
Absolutely, and we've constructed projects where we put in ceiling fans, lighting, and a full waterproof area underneath with TV and a wet bar. Obviously, we didn't build the wet bar. I had another contractor in there, but we were doing the deck build and the waterproofing, and it really turned into be the gathering place for those social and sporting events that are happening around the house. And even when that Sunday football day comes and the water's falling from the sky, they can still get out there and kind of enjoy everything in that early fall area.
Boy, that sounds like a lot of fun. That sounds like a neat space. Well, let's move on. Okay, I'm really considering getting a deck, but I don't know where to start. What should I look for in selecting deck contractors to come interview?
First and foremost is there's lots of different things out there where you can pretty much just kind of not really do your research as far as looking for the referrals and other customer experiences. When you're building a deck, it's an absolute must that you need to talk to and look at some of the contractors' finished work, because while say windows are made in a manufacturing plant, they come to a house and they get installed into a house and they look fantastic regardless of the skill set of anybody. With a deck, you're getting a giant pile of materials and you're custom building it right on site. And so you want to make sure that they can turn that pile of stuff into a beautiful finished product. And the only way you can know that is by looking at some of their finished work and talking to the customers that they've had that work done for to find out what their experience was. How long did it take? Was the job site messy? Did they finish it out properly? Did they have to come back and fix some stuff up? There's a great story that we have is we had a gentleman who was quite particular, and the good thing was my lead carpenter was even more particular. And so when the wood showed up in the driveway, the first thing we noticed when we got there is that it had footprints all over it, whether this was from the supply house yard or somebody there after it was delivered had walked all over it. We went ahead and swapped out that wood, had the delivery truck come back, bring us some fresh wood, because we didn't want a bunch of dirty footprints all over this guy's brand new wood deck. And so something as small and meticulous as that can make the big difference. And believe it or not, this customer wrote a great online testimonial for us and actually referenced that one point. And as you can imagine, the rest of the build went fantastic. But this is really where it comes down to is do your research, see their work, and listen to their customers. If you feel good after those three things, then really it's just a matter of making budget fit project.
That's great. What great advice. I really appreciate that. Well, let's say, switching gears a little bit, that we have an existing deck. What are some ways, or maybe even a brand new deck, what are some ideas, things that we should be doing to maintain not only the appearance of our deck, but also its structure and integrity over time?
Well, structurally, one of the things you'll want to do is, go underneath the deck if you have an exposed area. Take a look at the rafters. Make sure there's no nails that are kind of backing out or any of the carriage bolts and nuts that are getting loose. Very simple maintenance with a hammer and a wrench that you can do to kind of keep things tight. As far as with an all wood deck, which seems to be kind of the majority of stuff that's happening here, what you're going to want to do is you want to make sure that deck gets cleaned and treated with a stain or a paint at least every 3 to 4 years. This is where the ongoing maintenance cost of all wood deck kind of starts to add up over the time versus the 20 to 30 year lifespan of the synthetic woods. But that's going to be the biggest thing to make sure that it feels good and stays great for you. Once you get to a certain point where it doesn't feel so good, you may want to get up there and pressure wash it. And this is the biggest problem I see with a lot of DIYers, homeowners that kind of take things a little too far. They grab their pressure washer, they get in there, and they want to start kind of cleaning everything off and get that stuff nice and bright. And before you know it, they kind of ruin their wood because the wood's a little soft, and now it starts to get feathering and it feels fuzzy. And it's just, all in all, it doesn't feel or look great again. They try to stain over it, and now it feels like they're walking on sandpaper. So again, you want to be very careful about how you maintain your stuff. If we switch past that, and you get to the point where, you know what, the wood is just beyond maintenance at this point. A couple of options that can be done there is we can actually take a look at some of these deck over products. They're very heavy kind of gap filling paints, which are meant to kind of basically give the wood a new life and a new surface. Those work absolutely fantastic for wood up to a certain point. But once we get to a certain point of degradation, now we're looking at stripping all the top pieces off, as long as it's structurally sound, and going back with all new top plates and deck boards, and basically kind of giving that old deck new life with the transplant of stuff. So,
well, that was actually going to be my next couple of questions. Was how do we know when there's nothing more left to do? We've all been out on decks where there's splinters sticking up out of the wood and so forth. Is there a point at which it's still structurally sound but so cosmetically bad that we need to replace it? I guess the way I'm looking at it is, could it be really ugly but still safe?
Absolutely. Wood has this great way of weathering, but still maintaining its structural integrity. Just to give you one example of a solution we had for a customer that had a deck that was in a very, poor appearance, but structurally was okay. What we did is they didn't have the money to strip off all the railings and strip off all the deck boards and kind of go back with new wood in one shot. So what we did is we worked with them over a period of about 4 years. Year one, what we did is we went ahead and we pressure washed all the railings and kind of restained and got those taken care of. And then we took and put an outdoor carpet cut to size and stapled in place over the deck boards. There was a lot of splinters, but it wasn't to the point where it needed to be replaced. So we went ahead and put that outdoor carpet over there, gave them a new walking texture, and that lasted for a couple of years. Gave them the ability to save up for the project they really wanted. And when 4 years passed by and it was time to come in, again, we were able to take off all of the railings, take off all the deck boards. The framing needed a little bit of tightening up. We got that done, and they went back with a beautiful synthetic wood and a powder-coated aluminum rail because that's what their budget really they wanted, and they had to save it for it. And so, again, by having a good kind of a temporary solution, we were able to give them what they really wanted in the end. It took some time, but we were able to help them.
What a great solution. That's a great story. I really enjoyed that. Now, in that case, the foundation of the deck was still sound. Is there ever a case where so much time has passed or so much traffic has crossed over the deck that even the foundation and posts have to be replaced, or is that very unusual?
Well, if it's done properly at the beginning, it can last for many decades as far as foundation footers and the structural portions. What we get into a problem with is say, a deck that's constructed on 4x4 posts, and if the footers aren't put in properly, you can have too much settling. So one of the things we want to take a look at is, as we look at the posts and where they connect to the ledger boards and the beams, does everything line up? Is there any kind of settling, or is there anything that's kind of shifting down? If you have any shifting, it gives the deck a little bit of a bounce to it. That's what we want to do, is go ahead and take out the old footing, take out the old post, and kind of re-get that set. But again, I've seen decks that are 30 years old that all they need is a facelift, because they have taken the time over the years to do the maintenance as far as the staining, and it was constructed the right way, and they kept water from pooling around the base of the post. So you maintain something the right way, it can last for a very long time.
All great information. Those are all the questions that I have for you, Jeremiah. Is there anything I haven't asked you, or something you thought would be important to share with our audience about buying, maintaining, and keeping a beautiful deck?
The only bit of advice I have and this kind of goes after a little over a decade in this business, is don't wait to put on your deck or reface it. A lot of folks I see end up waiting till they're about ready to sell their home, and then they go through and they put all this time, effort, and money into the deck. They enjoy it for about a month, and then all of a sudden, poof, the house is sold. So if you've got a kitchen with a door that's boarded up because there's no deck going back there, what you're going to want to do is go ahead and get that deck taken care of, pay for it over the life of the time you're living in the home, and enjoy it. Outside of that, it's fair game for anyone to do what they need to do.
That's great. Well, as always, Jeremiah, thank you so much for sharing the knowledge.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Frank, and I just can't tell you how grateful I am for the opportunity to chat with people about this kind of stuff.
Well, speaking for myself, I learned more about decks. I didn't even know how much I didn't know about decks. So I hope you did as well. And we'll see you next time on Jeremiah Davies' series of educational videos for Northern Virginia homeowners.